Hi there, I am Laina Orlando, and this is another episode of You Are the Light of the World. Every single one of us is the essence of God expressing itself in human form. We have heard many times that we're divine beings having human experiences, but what has happened to us is that we have been conditioned to believe that we're just humans and the divine part is out there somewhere on a cloud, something that we maybe can achieve when we die, something that we have to work really hard to get. And that kind of conditioning has helped us forget the truth of who we are. And if we remember that truth, if we activated that truth inside of us, we would really, truly be powerful beyond measure. This world would be a very different place if we walked around embodying that we are the light of the world. Why? Because the light illuminates things. The light lightens things up. It makes it funner, more joyful. When the light is on, everything is transparent. You can see everything. Nothing can hide. There can be no darkness. There can be no secrets because you can see it. Everything is clear and easy to see. And when we operate from that place of the light being turned on inside of us and having the ability to tap into that wisdom of our divine self, well, we operate in a state of grace. The world that we experience is one that has been touched by our grace because we have allowed grace to touch us. So I want to share something from A Course in Miracles, my favorite teaching in the whole world. And let me share this as I'm reading from the text. This is in chapter number 7. The title of that chapter is called The Gifts of the Kingdom, and I am reading from section number 11. And I happen to be on paragraph 2, so I'm going to read a couple of paragraph 2, 3, and a little bit, just 2 and a little bit from 3. Paragraph 2. Grace is the natural state of every son of God. When he is not in a state of grace, he is out of his natural environment and does not function well. Everything he does, and think of the word he as she, everything we do becomes a strain because we were not created for the environment that we have made. He therefore cannot adapt to it, nor can he adapt it to him. There is no point in trying. A son of God is happy only when he knows he is with God. That is the only environment in which he will not experience strain, because that is where he belongs. It is also the only environment that is worthy of him, because his own worth is beyond anything he can make. That's only chapter or paragraph 2. God created us in its image. God created us lovers. God created us to extend love. Like a little child when they're born, they are giving love. Everybody can be around a little baby. Nobody feels threatened around a little baby because they haven't learned yet to block their state of grace. And when we move from grace, we then move into the state of greed, all about me. And that happens with children like around the age of 2. It's mine. Because the mind gets conditioned to think selfishly because we get trained into personal survival. If we don't grow up with parents who are conscious that grace is a natural state for the Son of God, for the daughter of God, for every single one of us, if we are not reminded from the time that we're little that grace is who we really are, that does not become the state of beingness that we live from. So we cannot experience heaven on earth once we make the world in the image of ourselves, once we have aligned with a state of greed, a state of selfishness, survival. It's all about me, self-protection. Course in Miracles wants us to understand that the mind got trained to believe things that are not true, that the mind got conditioned into selfishness. Why? Because we observed that in our parents. We watched our parents lie to others. How many times did some of us observe mom on the phone with grandma back in the days when the phones were, coiled and connected to the wall? Mom saying, oh no, we can't come over right now. Susie doesn't feel good. Shh. Telling, the kid, shh, don't say anything because the kid was going to say, Mommy, I feel just fine. Or we watched our parents tell us that, we needed to do as they said, not as they were doing, because they were controlling us into a certain kind of behavior that they were not willing to do. So our mind got confused from, in a state of grace, we are loving, we're kind, we are honest. That's one of the key aspects, qualities, characteristics of grace is honesty. So we learn at a very young age that everybody's taking care of themselves. Everybody has themselves first, and we grow up then taking care of ourselves. When that gets ingrained into our mind, it creates what is known as a thought system that perpetuates a false identity, an identity of separation and self-protection. When we go into that self-protection, we can descend into pretty low levels of density. You can be protecting yourself with pride and not hurt anybody. Not really. You just put yourself first no matter what. You make sure that you are in line for the promotion, and you don't care about anybody else. You literally can do a lot of things for yourself and that don't really hurt other people. But if you descend into deeper and deeper levels of egoic greed, you get to the point that you don't care who you're hurting. You don't care who gets hurt. You don't care if you take their life. You don't care about what happens to others, because everything becomes about, number one, me, in a selfish way, in a greedy way. That's why it's grace or greed. There's just no other way. In a state of greed, if you are somebody who at a very young age, that's the example that you got, in your consciousness is filled with that. So your egoic identity is all about me. You are going to move through all of the levels of your life education, your trajectory. You got to take care of number one. It's my way or the highway. You will little by little move into positions of more and more power, because greedy people tend to do that. They climb the corporate ladder. They find a way because they're willing to sell their soul. And when that continues and you move into positions of greater power, running the company, then you don't mind buying out the politicians to make sure that they have laws that give you what you want. Or you get into politics so that you are the one who makes these laws and everybody has to pay you if they want to get those laws. In the world today, we have a state of greed that is out of control. And this is one of the ways that greed looks like. It has to control others to have its way. So this mandating of jabs, this mandating of even going to people's houses door to door, this mandating of what has to happen, even though it's contrary to a lot of the medical research that is happening, this censoring, this total and complete disregard for what in this country the American people want, where Congress is not listening to the people. That's because the level of greed that has happened now inside of people in positions of power is really high, because they are being rewarded with very, very high levels of money, because the greed in the corporation is so high, and the number of money, the amount of money is so high because the quantities is so high. And there are fewer companies. There are more and more concentrations of those who, very few who are in charge of the many corporations. Monopolies are everywhere. So the Course in Miracles wants us to really take a look at what happens to us when we shift from grace to greed. We descend into a very, very, I'm going to call it survival way of living that is all about protecting me and me alone. Survival to keep the body alive, to keep humanity alive, when it is a collective desire for survival, which we're beginning to feel now. More and more people want to be free to live their lives. That kind of survival, it is a call from grace for all of us to be free, to experience what the United States Constitution states, that God endowed each and every one of us with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our life should be ours. So the Course in Miracles wants us to know that grace is natural. So the question that I would like to pose is, how come we're not living from that place? How did we shift from grace to greed? And every single human at some point moves into a state of greed, which is why we have the awakenings. We begin the spiritual journey, we begin to become self-aware, begin to remember the truth of who we are, and we wake up out of the blinders on that make us greedy because we've been conditioned through the school systems, through church, through the government to give up our power, give up our rights, give up everything for the good of everybody else. But typically the good of everybody else is for the greedy ones that are running the show, not for everybody, because if we operated from grace, we wouldn't be hurting anybody. We wouldn't have to give up anything for others. We would all enjoy it equally. So let me read paragraph number 3 here. Consider the kingdom that you have made and judge its worth fairly. So let's look at this world that we have made. The ego has made a world of greed, and you know what? It's a world that is collapsing. It's not sustainable because at some point, the greedy need to work their way up to the top. So we've got monopolies in terms of different types of companies, monopolies, but even inside of that, some of them are buying each other out. Eventually, there's going to be one company. So there's going to be one CEO. And you know what that's going to do? It's going to be totally unbearable when there's only one way that they dictate for the rest of us. Is that the kind of world you want to live in when there's no more fair competition? If there's no competition, greed is going to be even more rampant because now they get to decide what everybody else gets. Fascinating. And we're not too far from that. So consider the kingdom that you have made and judge its worth fairly. Is it worthy to be the home for a child of God that lives in freedom, that is created to be in freedom and to experience happiness? Does it keep his heart untouched by fear and allow him to give always without any sense of loss? No, because when you're afraid of, this is mine, this is protected, and there's no competition, there's no other way that you can go to try and get something for a better deal, a better price to feed your family. If there's only one company and they set the price and you can't afford it, guess what happens? At that level of greed, that people are dying, that people are suffering does not matter. We've been tolerating that level of greed. Hungry people on the planet. Let's think about that. Why are children of God who were created to experience grace experiencing the hunger that they're experiencing if it wasn't for the greed of those who have so much and don't want to share it or use what they have to punish others? I just recently read about something that's going on in Haiti. And in Haiti, they are literally in the process of withholding food to force the Haitians to take the vaccine. Can you imagine not feeding somebody so that you can have them get your way, so that you can have them be at the point that without food, they have to say, okay, no, there's no longer an opportunity to honor themselves, to honor their own sovereignty. And that just absolutely tugged at my heart when I heard that today. But we have descended to these levels of greed. So does it teach him that this giving is his joy and that God himself thanks him for his giving? When we operate from grace, there is no loss. Giving and receiving become one. Sharing becomes natural because it is in our heart to extend the kingdom. It is in our heart to know that as long as you've got what you need, you are wealthy beyond measure. But our minds have been conditioned into net worth. And our self-worth comes from our net worth. I lost a marriage. Marriage ended because I married somebody whose net worth was attached to his self-worth. And it was just fascinating to watch that man totally, completely value money over the love that we had, because in his mind, he went into protection mode of what he had. So here we are, looking at the fact that if grace is our natural state, how did we get into the state of greed? So it completes, the sentence completes with that. So that is the only environment in which you can be happy, the one where we're giving, where we're sharing, where we are truly living in a state of grace. You cannot make it any more than you can make yourself. God gave that to us, a state of grace. We just have to use it. It has been created for you as you were created for it. God watches over his children and then denies them nothing. Yet when they deny him, her, God is really, it's not a him. God is consciousness. God is mother, father, God, if you want to call it that. They do not know this. We don't know when we're blocking God. I had no idea I was blocking God when I was told God was outside of me. I thought the church knows better. The Pope knows better, and the Pope's telling me that that's where God is. So by gosh, that must be true. But it was all programming into my mind so that I did not accept that God was here. Because if I knew God was here, as I've learned through my awakening, it activates a state of grace. And you know what's really exciting? When you live from grace alone, you lose fear for the greedy ones. You lose fear for what can be taken from me, because nothing can be taken from me. I have everything. My mind has been trained. Course in Miracles is a course in mind training. My mind has been trained to think with God, to know the truth of my eternalness, to operate from that sense of knowingness. So I have a foundation that is very solid. I am not this body. I am embodying, my divinity is embodying my humanity. So I have grace even for the greedy ones. They don't scare me anymore. If anything, I have compassion for them. I have compassion because they don't realize that they're going to eventually have to exterminate one another, because there can only be one that wins. In the mindset of greed that the ego creates, there can only be one winner, because greed is always taking care of you. So at some point, they will destroy each other. The billionaires will destroy each other because they will want to be the only one that's in charge of everything, that controls everything. It's a self-destructive system, the state of greed. And so it goes on to say here, and I'm going to read this again. So God watches over his children and denies them nothing. Yet when they deny him, her, God, whatever you want to call it, they do not know this because they deny themselves everything. You who would give the love of God to everything you see and touch and remember are literally denying heaven to yourself. Let me read this again. You who could give the love of God to everything that you see and touch and remember are literally denying heaven to yourself. It is so easy to be in a state of grace and share what you have, share your knowledge, your wisdom, share your love, share your compassion. For me, I share my state of forgiveness with all of these greedy people. Like Jesus taught us, anybody who is in a place of doing their job, even if they're taking the life of somebody else, like those who were hammering the nails through his hands, he forgave them. They don't know what they're doing. Do you realize that the regular person who is operating in fear, who's taking on the jab, who's tattling on their neighbors, who is following the rules, who will be willing to do whatever they're being told for a morsel of bread, they are operating in pure greed, survival. I got to take care of me. That means that they're in total and complete terror. They're really afraid, because when you have fear, you cannot have faith. To have faith means that you live by grace and grace alone. That means that you cannot take from another when you realize your oneness with them, when you realize we're one. You share what you have and you give it. You break it up. Even if you're giving crumbs to everybody, you want everybody to have, because you wouldn't want to have it by yourself. In a state of greed, it's about taking all those crumbs away from everybody, because I'm going to create, put them all together and make my biscuit, the biggest one. In a state of grace, you take that biscuit, you break it down, and you give everybody a morsel. We are the light of the world, but the only way to experience living from grace is because we have to turn that light on within ourselves. We have to accept that we're powerful beyond measure. We have to accept that we were born that way. And we got trained, we got conditioned, programmed out of the state of grace. But the only way to return to the state of grace is through honesty. Look at the places where you're in fear and notice how your fear makes you greedy, makes you selfish, makes you willing to tattle on your neighbors, makes you willing to be in a place where you are okay being controlled. If you think that an external authority like a government, pharmaceutical company, media, has your best interest at hand, when they are all about the money, you are sadly mistaken because you have sold your soul to the devil. You will seek whatever they give you, whatever tiny morsel they will throw your way, not from grace, but from taking from you more and more each day until all they leave you with is a morsel, until such point when they want that too. If you don't practice being honest and see where you are operating from fear, see how you are willing to take substances in your body without even knowing what's in them. See how quick you are to condemn your neighbors and judge people, conspiracy theorists, just because you watch something in a news media that is controlled by very few people. If you're not willing to question what is coming into your mind that makes you fearful and makes you greedy and selfish and operate in survival, you won't be able to turn on your light and return to grace. Because what will happen is that when you become honest, you are going to go through a process of absolute sheer terror. You're going to feel guilt. You're going to feel shame. You're going to feel anger. And all of those things have to be processed. But most of us are so afraid of admitting that we were wrong, that we'd rather be controlled and destroyed. It's what happened to many people. Many civilizations have been destroyed because of their fear. They followed, what little sense of safety they thought that they might have had. There is time today in America. This is 2021. This is July 2021. There is time to shift from greed to grace, to shift from ego to God. But it will not happen without an open mind and a willingness to question what's going on. I know I have absolutely zero fear about what's taking place because all of it is happening inside of consciousness. So my grace, my ability to extend grace comes because I know where I reside. I am in the kingdom of heaven. And I will always remain there because I'm not a body. I am a divine being embodying this physical vessel. So it is my job, my delight, my honor to be the light of the world and shed light on what's going on. You take what you want and leave what doesn't. If you want to stay inside of your story and experience fear and experience the greed that will take care of only you, that's okay, because you will have to deal with the consequences of that, because every single one of us has to have the lessons that we are here to have to wake us up to our divinity. But if you want to access your divinity and you would like to study with me, please reach out to me, Laina at LainaOrlando.com, or go to my YouTube channel, Laina Orlando, filled with teachings that will help you understand the Course in Miracles. Go to my website, LainaOrlando.com. There's a free course called The Soul's Journey. I am all about helping whoever is willing to help themselves wake up to remember that you are the light of the world and you were created to bring light to the planet. And if you feel that you haven't darkened yourself because your light has been snuffed, feels like it's been snuffed from you because of the fears that you're experiencing, give yourself a little bit of grace and you will be able to return to the truth of who you are. Thank you so much. I love you. You are magnificent. And we're in this together because we are one. Have a blessed day.